They fought for countries that never saw them as equals. They wore foreign uniforms, bled on foreign soil, and died for foreign flags. But when the war was over, the parades weren't for them. The medals, the pensions, the stories of valor, none bore their names. These were the African soldiers of World War II. Over 800,000 of them served in the Allied forces, recruited, conscripted, and often deceived by promises of honor and equality. Instead, they returned home to betrayal, stripped of their dignity, denied compensation, and in many cases, silenced, sometimes literally. In Senegal, dozens of veterans who dared to demand their back pay were gunned down by French soldiers in cold blood. Their crime? Asking to be treated like men, not tools discarded after use. Meanwhile, in the history books of their colonial rulers, their names were conveniently omitted, buried under myths of liberation and brotherhood. They were good enough to die for empire, but not good enough to be remembered by it. What happens to the forgotten soldiers once the war ends? What happens when the world they fought to protect decides they are no longer necessary? They say it's justice, but it's not. To understand the betrayal, we must first understand the promise. At the outbreak of World War II, Europe's colonial empires, especially France, Britain, and Belgium, were desperate for manpower. Their populations had already been decimated by World War I, and with the Nazi threat growing, they looked once more to their colonies, particularly to Africa, a continent they had subjugated through decades of imperial rule. France mobilized a massive force known as the Tirailleurs Sénégalais, which, despite the name, recruited men from across French West Africa, Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Côte d'Ivoire, and Senegal. These were not just African soldiers. They were colonial subjects, stripped of citizenship, but burdened with the duty to defend the motherland. What followed was a cruel contradiction. In Europe, they were hailed as saviors when they helped liberate towns from German occupation. Civilians cheered them, kissed them, threw flowers at their feet. But behind the scenes, a darker reality unfolded. In the French army, African soldiers were often segregated, paid less than white troops, and deliberately kept from the front lines of celebration. Even in victory, they were invisible. British commanders praised African soldiers for their bravery, but quickly moved to erase their presence from public memory after the war. Many were discharged with no formal honors. Some even sent back home in secrecy, their war contributions brushed aside. But nothing revealed the colonial double standard more brutally than the issue of pensions and back pay.